It is a problem because we don't know who they are, we don't know the past criminal record, we don't know the past history, and they're committing some heinous crimes.
How are people feeling about it?
Very scared.
It is very important. They need to stop illegal migration into this country. It's tearing us apart.
The border is out of control. The streets have lost their calm. Society is losing faith. An empire that once ruled half the world is now struggling to protect its own shores. Brexit once promised take back control, but a few years later, over 100,000 people flooded the streets of London, chanting "Stop the boats," as if the country were being invaded. The national flag flooding the streets like a tide is no longer a symbol of pride, but has become a dividing line. The government spends billions of pounds each year to handle the influx of people crossing the sea. Meanwhile, the NHS is exhausted, schools are overcrowded, and the cost of living is suffocating each family. The people are outraged. Immigrants live in fear. Even British people of color, born and raised here, are told to go back home, as if they have never belonged here. Is the UK's asylum system overloaded? Is the government able to control the situation? And more importantly, is this merely an immigration crisis or a sign of a deep-seated crisis of trust in post-Brexit British society? In today's video, we will analyze the whole picture, from the flow of people crossing the English Channel, the budget costs, the impact on public services, to the political shifts occurring on the streets of England. If you stand in London in September 2025, close your eyes and just listen. You might think you have stumbled into a documentary about the turbulent times of the 70s or 80s, but no, this is reality. With over 100,000 people flooding the streets of the capital in the Unite the Kingdom march, there are estimates saying the number could reach 150,000. The sea of flags is dense. The slogan "Stop the boats" rang out like an alarm bell. Westminster has been paralyzed many times. Bus routes had to be rerouted. Small shops closed early. Some shop owners said sales on protest days dropped significantly, but what they were more worried about was the tension in the air. More than 1,000, even 1,600 police officers were deployed just to keep the two crowds from clashing. 26 officers were injured in a major incident. In Liverpool, Bristol, and many other cities, protests and counter-protests took place simultaneously. The police had to deploy additional resources by the hour. When security forces have to stand between citizens and citizens, we begin to ask ourselves, what is really breaking apart? Some hotels used as temporary shelters for asylum seekers have become weekly protest sites. According to some sources, the cost of renting hotels for the asylum system is estimated to be around £2 billion per year. That figure, in the context of the NHS struggling and the rising cost of living, seems to become a flashpoint. Not everyone reads the budget report, but everyone feels the increase in electricity bills. Many people shared that they had never seen this scene since the 1970s. The British flag is appearing abundantly on the streets, but its meaning seems to have changed. From a symbol of unity, it has become a boundary. One side sees it as a call to protect identity. The other side sees signs of exclusion. And in the middle is a society that is desperate. Some researchers have called this the most public division in decades. In pubs, on buses, at family dinners, people talk about a cold civil war. Not guns and bullets, but it's the gaze. It's the suspicion. It's the feeling that the country you once knew is slipping away somewhere. How ironic it is that a nation proud of its long-standing parliamentary tradition now has to erect iron fences between its own citizens to avoid clashes. History will surely have something to say about this image. Is this just a temporary protest, or is it the surface of a much deeper undercurrent? When people feel that the system is no longer listening, what else can they do but take to the streets? And when everyone says they are being left behind, who is actually ahead? If you are also wondering what brought us to this moment, consider subscribing to follow this analysis series. Because to understand why the streets have turned into battle lines, we might have to go back to a promise made nearly a decade ago. A very short slogan: take back control. In 2016, We voted with both faith and hope. Take back control. That phrase seemed to be the most resolute commitment to a future where borders are tightened. And for many people, especially the generation that lived through the post-war period and witnessed the country once very confident in its position, it is not just a slogan, it is the feeling of taking the wheel again. One of the main drivers of Brexit is border control. Previously, net immigration averaged about 250,000 people per year. Not a small number, but still within the range that many people consider manageable. Then, in 2023, according to official figures, legal immigration reached around 900,000 people, a post-COVID record high. That number, despite having its own economic and policy context, seems like a joke to those who voted to leave the EU to reduce pressure. Perhaps the promise of a self-sufficient Britain is being mocked by the small boats that quietly cross the channel every day. That scene is like trying to lock the front door tightly, but leaving the back door wide open. Disappointment transforms into extreme anger when people feel that their borders seem to be wide open in a more dangerous form. It seems that England is caught in a cruel paradox. We need immigrant labor to run the economy, but society is not yet ready for the change in demographic structure. The current government, under pressure from the crowd, is trying to tighten regulations on students and healthcare workers. Extending the residency period from 5 years to 10 years seems to be just a belated attempt to appease public opinion, a paper shield against the impending firestorm. The post-pandemic economic picture further exacerbates the feeling that the pie is being divided into smaller pieces, a pie that should rightfully be reserved for those who built it. Clearly, we left an alliance to take back control, only to find that control in a globalized world is more complex than the slogan on a campaign bus. It turns out that taking the wheel doesn't mean the road will have fewer potholes. So, did Brexit really fail? Or did we place too many expectations on it? When a promise becomes a symbol of hope, can it ever bear the weight of all economic, cultural, and social discontent? And when faith in the promise wanes, what will society do? Searching for new solutions, or looking for someone to blame? Are the protests we are seeing today merely a delayed consequence of a referendum nearly a decade ago? If the memories of 2016 are still vivid in your mind, continue to join us and consider subscribing to the channel so we can analyze it more thoroughly together. Because behind the debate about borders and policies, there is a pain point that almost every family touches: NHS. And perhaps that's where the emotions truly ignite. If there is one thing that has made many generations of Britons hold their heads high, it is the NHS. After World War II, when the country was still in ruins, we built a healthcare system based on a very simple principle: care according to need, not according to the wallet. It is not just a service, it is the ethical commitment of the nation to its own citizens. But in recent years, that feeling seems to have faded. According to 2023 data, more than 7 million people are on the waiting list for treatment at NHS England. The waiting time has reached a record high, according to Nuffield Trust. For many elderly people, that is not a dry statistic. That's an appointment postponed. It is the pain that drags on for a few more months. It is the unspoken worry during family dinners. In that context, it is understandable that frustration seeks an anchor. On the protest streets, one can hear the argument that immigration is overloading the system, and it's true that the NHS is under great pressure. But the story doesn't end there. According to the General Medical Council in 2023, about 42% of doctors in the UK were trained abroad. Many hospitals, especially in rural areas, heavily rely on international nurses and doctors. There are reports indicating that some foreign medical staff are considering leaving due to feelings of insecurity in the tense social context. In 2024, there was an incident where an ambulance carrying nurses was pelted with objects during a riot. Not the image anyone would want to associate with their country. Because if those who take care of us start looking for safer places, who will be on night duty in the emergency room? The cost of living has increased by 8 to 10% in less than 2 years. The elderly feel it acutely: energy, food, and medication bills. As life becomes more expensive, patience also wears thin. NHS, in the eyes of many, has become a symbol of something that is on the decline, not just because of immigration, not just because of the budget, but because of the feeling of the country being exhausted. We argue about who is overloading the system, while the system itself keeps us healthy every day, regardless of skin color or place of birth. The NHS doesn't ask for your vote before treating you. Perhaps it is the least political thing in a country that is increasingly politicizing everything. Are we blaming the right thing, or are we looking in the wrong direction? If there is a shortage of healthcare workers, is the solution to reduce the number of incoming people, or to retain and protect those who are already here? And when we talk about taking back control, what is more important to control? Borders, or the ability to care for the elderly and young children? If you were once proud of the NHS, consider signing up so we can continue to dissect this issue calmly and without extremism. Because the pain is not just in the hospital, it also lies in the sense of belonging. And that's what we will discuss next. There is a saying that sounds very simple but is as heavy as lead. I have to prove that I am English. I have to prove that I am English. The person who said that was born here, grew up here, paid taxes here. But in the current atmosphere, they feel they need to explain their very existence. Not because the law requires it, but because the gaze around has changed. In recent months, several hate-motivated attacks have been reported. According to Home Office data from 2023, hate crimes increased after the riots. There was a case where a Sikh woman was dangerously affected and told that she doesn't belong here. Those words may cause deeper wounds than physical injuries, because they touch on the fundamental question: who has the right to belong? Community centers that were established since the Windrush era express concern that history is repeating itself in some way. And, notably, the fear today is not always loud. It is quieter. One person recounted that when they entered the supermarket, they felt like they were being watched. A family restricts their child from going to the park. No alarm bells, only silent vigilance. They call it hypervigilance, a state of always having to pay attention to the surroundings as if danger could appear at any moment. Meanwhile, on the protest streets, some people say they want to take back the country. A statement that sounds strong. But whose country is that? And since when has the ownership of a nation become something that can be disputed among its citizens? The national flag, once a common symbol, has now become a controversial object. Not because the flag itself has changed, but because the meaning attached to it has been pulled in two directions. Perhaps the most painful thing is the lack of dialogue. A multi-ethnic society, but increasingly less listening. Families with children entering university, stories of successful integration, still exist, but they are overshadowed by sensational headlines. Bad news always travels faster than regular news. We take pride in the tradition of fair play, in the spirit of playing fair. But in this debate, sometimes we forget the basic rule of the game. Listen before concluding. When a person born here is still told to go home, then where is home really? And is the memory of a peaceful past causing us to view the present through a foggy lens of nostalgia? If you believe that England was once strong due to unity rather than suspicion, share your thoughts and consider signing up to continue this conversation, because perhaps the real fuse is not just on the streets, it lies elsewhere, on the screen of our phone. Perhaps what is happening on the streets does not start from the square, it starts from the screen. A strange name appeared online in 2024, linked to a suspect in a serious incident. That name was later confirmed to be incorrect. But before the truth could catch up, the stores were vandalized. The crowds had gathered. The damage occurred before the correction could spread. False news spreads like wildfire. Correction is done on foot. According to Ofcom 2023, the group over 65 is increasingly relying on Facebook as their main source of news. There's nothing wrong with that. Each generation has its own habits. But when the algorithm prioritizes outrage content because it keeps viewers engaged longer, emotions begin to be served like fast food. The angrier you are, the longer you stay. And the system rewards that even more. There are edited videos that spread before being verified. There are controversial statements from famous figures online implying that civil war is inevitable. Whether or not there is an explanation afterward, the statement still leaves an echo. It plants an idea in the viewers' minds that the collapse has begun, and when enough people believe it, they start to act as if it were true. Some analysts call this a digital trust crisis, not because technology itself is bad, but because we are living in two parallel realities. In one reality, the data shows that the situation is being adjusted. In the other reality, a viral video shows the country in flames. People choose a reality that aligns with their emotions. We used to worry that sensationalist journalism distorted the truth. Now, everyone can become a small newspaper with a share button right at their fingertips. And the algorithm, perhaps, is the most powerful editor that no one has elected. The government has increased the sentences for those who incite online violence. Expedited trials are being implemented. Prisons are overcrowded. But the question remains, can punishing the consequences address the root cause? When misinformation can spread in a matter of hours, can the response system keep up in a matter of weeks? It is worth considering that the older generation, who grew up with television and print newspapers, now have to navigate a space where the real and the fake are sometimes hard to distinguish, not because they lack intelligence, but because the environment has changed faster than the habit of verification. So are we reacting to the truth, or to the version curated by algorithms for us? Who truly benefits when society splits into two echo chambers, each side believing they are the victim of the other? An empire that once drew the world map in red ink is now questioning who it is. That is the quiet feeling in many conversations. When trust in the government declines, according to the Ipsos 2024 survey, when people say they no longer believe the system listens to them, it's not just a number, it is the mood. A tougher stance on immigration is rising in the context of a slowing economy. Inflation, cost of living, pressure on public services. When the pie seems to shrink, everyone worries their share will be cut thinner. But on the other side, counter-protests are also increasing. Many young people took to the streets to defend the idea of a multicultural England. They see a different future. Two visions coexist, both believing they are saving the country. According to ONS 2023, immigration significantly contributes to GDP and the labor market. But GDP is not an emotion. People do not live in charts. They live in their neighborhood, in the hospital waiting room, in the end-of-month energy bill. So, the story is never just black and white. It is a multi-layered picture, and each person is standing at a different angle of the frame. Political polarization is increasing, but at the same time, the major cities remain dynamic, diverse, and full of creativity. London, Manchester, Birmingham are still places where talent from all over gathers. So is this a collapse or just a noisy transitional phase? British history has overcome greater crises. World War, oil crisis, ethnic riots. Each time, this country is not the same as before, but it doesn't disappear. Crises often expose weaknesses. At the same time, it also forces society to reflect on itself. Perhaps we are at such a moment. We often say we are a nation of keep calm and carry on. But it seems that the keep calm part is facing serious challenges. However, bringing panic to the streets is not necessarily a sign of the apocalypse. Sometimes, it is a sign of a system being forced to change. The core issue may not be immigration itself, but rather trust, faith in the government, trust in the media, trust in neighbors. When trust is eroded, all policies become suspect. And when trust is rebuilt, many seemingly unsolvable problems become more manageable. So, is this a collapse or a test of history? The England you once knew can be recreated in another way, and more importantly, are we ready to listen to each other before deciding we are on two different sides? Today, England is not just debating immigration. England is debating itself, about identity, about fairness, about the feeling of control in an increasingly complex world. Street protests may be the loudest noise, but beneath that noise lies something deeper: anxiety, disorientation, and even nostalgia for a time when everything seemed clearer. Maybe we are witnessing a breaking point, It could also just be a sharp turn in history. The difference lies in how society reacts: panic or reflection, division or dialogue. Because a nation does not collapse merely due to disagreement. It weakens when it can no longer listen. Are today's protests a sign of collapse, or a warning that forces the system to change? When we say we are protecting the country, what are we really protecting? Territory, economy, or a sense of belonging? And in all these debates, what is the real fear hidden behind? If you find this video helpful, please like it so that more people can access this perspective. Please share if you think this discussion needs to be expanded. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue following in-depth, slow-paced, and non-sensational analyses. This video is made for the purpose of social analysis and public policy based on publicly available data sources. The content is not intended to attack any individual, community, or specific group. All viewpoints presented aim to stimulate multifaceted discussions, respect differences, and encourage constructive dialogue.